very well, Adam.
We can't hear you.
Hear me?
No.
All right, let me see what I can do. I'm trying a new webcam to see if it would work better, but apparently the microphone on it doesn't work very well.
When you get closer, you can hear a little bit better.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Are you looking up my nose?
Yes.
Audio's better.
Yeah, the view not so much.
Turn your video off.
Woo, man. All right, let's see
No,
if
the
I can
speaker
talk.
view won't have to do that. We just listen to you.
I'm just gonna talk loud, see if that helps. I'll scoot up nice and close to it. All right, we are doing lesson 6, I think. We're getting fairly well through the Song of Solomon. We're going to be doing chapter 5 and 6 tonight, so we're getting pretty close to the end, and we'll go from there. Let me share my screen and see where we're at here. Here we go. It's not wanting to. All right, maybe it'll let me do it now. Y'all see that?
Yes.
All right, so lesson 6. Here we go. Let's get going through here. In our outline, we're hitting this is really, you kind of, again, have to guess based on the details of the story, who's talking and what the occasion is. And I understand this to be kind of the end of the honeymoon. They're settling into life, this section. Some people still consider this part of the wedding night. That's up to you. I'm going to, because I'm the teacher, make the choice to call it the beginning of their marriage and the end of the honeymoon and them settling into life. So let's kind of go from there. I didn't assign the reading last week, so we'll go ahead and read it as a part of class tonight. And there's not that much stuff to discuss, so I don't think it'll put us behind at all to do some of that reading. But let's go ahead and read verses 2 through 8 of chapter 5. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. A sound, my love was knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my hair with droplets of the night. I have taken off my clothing. How can I put it back on? I have washed my feet. How can I get them dirty? My love thrust his hand through the opening, and my feelings were stirred for him. I rose to open for my love. My hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handles of the bolt. I opened to my love. My love had turned and gone away. My heart sank because he had left. I sought him, but I did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. The guards who go about the city found me. They beat me and wounded me. They took my cloak from me. The guardians of the walls, young women of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my love, tell him I am lovesick. So you have to figure out what in the world this is talking about, obviously, and who is speaking and when they're speaking, the occasion, all of those things that we mentioned earlier. And the beginning part there is probably pretty easy. I was sleeping, but my heart was awake. That idea of it's probably not the man, because you can tell that the man is speaking in the second half of the verse. So by default, it's probably best to understand that to be the wife, the woman. And then, of course, the man speaks afterwards because, we can see that from the my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. Those are all, names, nicknames that he has given to her through the book so far, especially my sister, my darling. And so we see that again being he has all these little pet names for her, and the pet names are helping to, again, display his love. So the occasion, though, is a little bit odd. We go from chapter 4, where they are together for their wedding night, to all of a sudden in chapter 5, the scene has changed. He is not with her. She is asleep he is gone for the evening. He's coming back. And so it's anyone's guess as to what's going on here.
I'm trying to clear my space.
So I don't know really what's going on here. I don't know exactly, why he is doing the thing, why he is not home with her. Why is he not, why is he not, with her and during the evening. A lot of people have guessed maybe this is just merely a dream that she's having. Other people have guessed maybe they've kind of settled back into life and he is out taking care of his flock, taking care of his fields, taking care of business the way that they would. And we know that oftentimes even like a landowner would have jobs that he would have to do at night. If you go back and think of the story of Ruth and Boaz, notice Boaz is out in the fields at the threshing floor in the evening or at night when Ruth comes and lays down by his feet. So there are occasions when he, maybe he's just gone doing some work. And that's where I kind of take that interpretation that he's gone, he's doing some work, he's taking care of his fields or his animals, and he's out late at night. She has already gone to bed. So this sounds a whole lot more like, they've settled into life, that they're kind of running their own schedules, so to speak here. And so she's already asleep. He comes home. She doesn't open the door. And so he has to figure out what to do. He has to figure out, and so he knocks. She doesn't answer. And so he goes ahead and leaves. But she does answer. It's just after he's already left. And so that's my guess as to what's going on based on the details. I don't think any of that would be too hard to figure out. But it is interesting here that the story has shifted from being all about one another to now they're back into life. They're back into living life. He's taking care of his business. She's at home, going to bed at night without him. They've kind of settled down into life. Yet even though they've settled down into life, they still have this great desire for each other. You see her, she's already settled in for the night, and so she has to prepare herself for him to come in. I think that's the statements there about the myrrh, that here he's coming home, so she's trying to make herself smell good, which would, cover up the smell, the natural smells that would be there from a non-bathing culture or a rarely bathing culture. So, she's trying to make herself beautiful and pretty and make herself enjoyable. And he on this occasion doesn't wait around for it. And so he apparently has gone off. Now, as far as the next section, here she goes out searching for him in the city, and all of a sudden some guards assault her. They find her, they take her, and they wound her, and they beat her, and they take the cloak from her. I don't really know, honestly, what's going on there. That's the part that makes people think maybe this is actually a kind of a nightmare she's having, a dream sequence of sorts. And because of that, she's having a kind of a, he's gone, and then she gets assaulted, and so it's just one of those nightmares, and she's having a nightmare because he's not home with her. That's also possible. I don't know. That's one of the difficulties with these pieces of Hebrew poetry. We don't have all of the stage directions the way we do in modern plays. We don't really have a clear indication of what's going on. All we know is he's not there when she opens the door, and somehow she gets assaulted by guards. But she calls out to the women of Jerusalem to find her love and to make sure that they find her. So reading on real quick, I just want to get through this section, and then we'll go back and talk about it. What makes the one you love better than another, most beautiful of women? What makes him better than another that you would give us this charge? My love is fit and strong, notable among 10,000. His head is purest gold, his hair is wavy and black as a raven, his eyes are like doves, beside flowing streams washed in milk and set like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, mounds of perfume, his lips are lilies, dripping with flowing myrrh, his arms are rods of gold, set with beryl, his body is an ivory panel covered with lapis lazuli, his legs are alabaster pillars set on pedestals of pure gold. His presence is like Lebanon, as majestic as the cedars. His mouth is sweetness. He is absolutely desirable. This is my love. This is my friend, young women of Jerusalem. A couple of, again, interesting pieces here. One is this. Up until this point, I'll stop sharing here. Up until this point, every time the young women or the chorus has spoken, what has been their main role? What has been the things that they're saying? Any takers on answering that question? Anybody want to try? All right, go ahead, Donna. Once you unmute.
Aren't they just being supportive of
Yeah.
her?
Yeah, I mean, up until this point, they've been kind of a cheerleader section. They're cheering on their love, cheering on this relationship, cheering on everything that's been happening. Does this seem different to y'all? I mean, when they speak now, it's, well, why do we have to go look for him? Like maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I mean, it just sounds to me like they're like, you know, why are you asking us to do this? What makes him any better than anybody else? Why, you know, why do we have to go do that? And that's kind of a dramatic shift from what it has been up until this point and what it is now. They very much have a that's not our job kind of attitude about this. And so she goes on to describe her husband. And what's interesting in, you know, when they say what makes him special is essentially what they ask, she describes him. And y'all notice any patterns in the way that she describes him? All right, Aaron? Asking you to
mostly she just talks about the way he looks.
Okay, yeah. So what, again, interestingly, that's kind of shifted some. Up until this point, she's talked primarily about his you know, the way he assures her, the way he makes her feel. Now she talks about how he looks. Rex, what about you?
I was going to say, in this description, she starts at the top of his head and works her way down.
Yeah, and again, that's very typical in this poem. He did the same thing for her back in chapter 4. He kind of starts at the top and goes down. Any other patterns you see in here? No? It's interesting to me that here the descriptions are all, she consistently compares him to precious jewels and metals, which is kind of an odd thing all of a sudden. You've got gold, you have raven and doves, but gold, jewels, myrrh, gold, beryl, ivory, lapis lazuli, alabaster, gold, and then cedars. You know, all of them being, you know, just kind of earthy type things. And it's just kind of interesting, again, that there's that pattern in the way that she describes them. I don't know what the significance of the precious metals, other than he's precious. I don't know the significance of top to bottom, other than it's just a pattern. It is, I think, significant that she shifts from how he makes her feel to how he looks. And that, I think partly because she now has a more intimate familiarity with how he looks than she's had before, because they are more intimate now that they're married. I think also a part of that is I think she doesn't feel very assured by him right now. There's something going on in their marriage here that's making her scared. It's making her frightened. He's always protected her, but all of a sudden she feels assaulted by the guards of the city. So she's no longer feeling protected by him. She no longer feels like he's there for her because she's having either this nightmare or this experience where she needs him and he's not there. And so again, you see that kind of a breakdown in the relationship a little bit. So again, I think that makes a difference here. Let me go back to the screen. Chapter 6, verse 1, 2, and 3. Where has your love gone? Which way has he turned? We will seek him with you. My love has gone down to his garden, to beds of spice, to feed in the gardens and gather the lilies. I am my love's and my love is mine. He feeds among the lilies. So again, probably the first verse there is the young women speaking again. They first said, why do we have to look for him? Now they're being supportive again because she makes this declaration of love and they're willing to go and look with her. And then verse 2 and 3. Some people have taken verse 2 and 3 to be an indication that she thinks he's cheating on her because of several statements early in the book where he talks about she is, back in chapter 2, verse 2, a lily among thorns, so is my darling among the young women. But here it says she's saying he feeds among the lilies. So maybe this is a reference to him being unfaithful, or that's her fear that he is being unfaithful. I don't know that that is the case. I don't have a problem with that being the case. And here's why. What you're going to find out very quickly is that he is not unfaithful, that he is very faithful to the love that he has felt with her and that he has expressed to her. So whether she feels that way or not doesn't change the reality that his love is genuine, and that his love really is what it's supposed to be. So, whichever way you want to take that, maybe these are just, literal statements. He is out in his fields and taking care of things. He's out in the field, gathering lilies. The verse 3 there, I am my love and my love is mine, and he is among, he feeds among the lilies. Some people interpret that to mean, that is an expression of their commitment to each other. Other people are saying that verse 3 is, this is the way it's supposed to be. I am my love and he is mine, but he is among the lilies. So you have to assume, is there an and? I am my love and he is mine and he is among the lilies, meaning he's just not here. Or, but I am my love, he is my love is mine, but he is among the lilies, meaning he's going out and, fulfilling himself in other ways. So ultimately in this whole, let me go back. Ultimately, she has maybe a dream, or maybe, that's the way I kind of wonder if it's not going on here. He's gone for an extended period of time. She misses him. She's having dreams about him. She feels assaulted. She feels exposed. She feels unsafe. And so the chorus is asking, well, what kind of man is this that would leave you behind? And so she describes him very lovingly. He's handsome, he's strong, he's wholly desirable, he's my friend. And therefore, they're saying he must prove his faithfulness, which is what you're going to see in chapter 6. So let's go ahead and read that section, chapter 6, verses 4 down through 13, and go from there. You are as beautiful as Tirzah, my darling, lovely as Jerusalem, awe-inspiring as an army with banners. Turn your eyes away from me, for they captivate me. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes coming up from washing, each one having its twin and not one missing. Behind your veil, your brow is like a slice of pomegranate. There are 60 queens and 80 concubines and young women without number, but my dove, my virtuous one, is unique. She is the favorite of her mother, perfect to the one who gave her birth. Women see her and declare her fortunate, queens and concubines also, and they sing her praises. Who is this who shines like the dawn, as beautiful as the moon, bright as the sun, awe-inspiring as an army with banners? We'll stop there before we get there. So, again, anything you notice in this section as you compare it to the rest of the book, and as you think about the way he describes her, anything you notice? All right, Barry, asking you to unmute. There you go.
It's like his original description of her. He
Okay, yeah,
still sees her as beautiful now as he did the first.
yeah. So some people, again, interpret this one of two ways. Some people interpret it like the man who, wife complains that he never says that he loves her. And of course he says, well, I told you once, wasn't that enough? And that some people interpret this description that way, that he's got no new material. He's no more, he doesn't still love her. He's just repeating what he said before. But I tend to take Barry's interpretation there, which is, he is as in love with her now as he has always been. He thinks no less of her now than he did when they first got married. He still finds her to be just as beautiful as he always has. I mean, that's why you have a lot of the similarities there. Notice she also still hasn't lost any teeth. I don't know how much time has passed here, but she's still got all her teeth. So way to go. And, what a great, declaration of beauty. But again, there are a few new things that are said here. What's interesting now is that what you didn't have, I don't believe, back in chapter 4 was all of these statements about how she is the envy of all women. And that you got statements like that here in chapter 6. You are the envy of the young women, of the brides, of the concubines, of queens. You are more beautiful, more lovely, more perfect, more desirable than any of those others. Above all of them, she is the virtuous one. She is the unique one. And so again, you have such beautiful statements here of love and beautiful statements here of the way that he feels about her. Now, you have to make, again, some assumptions in the storyline that we have, because when did she find them? Where did she find them? Did they go all the way out to his fields and that's where they're having this conversation? Has he finished his work and finally come home? So maybe that's where they're having this conversation. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know if, she, again, there's just a lot we don't know. All we have are their words, and that makes building the story around it a little more difficult. And possibly even that's part of the genius of the story, is that you can make it go a lot of different ways if you really work on it. But what I find interesting here, though, is that for him, she feels distressed, she feels unloved, she feels unsafe, and what he does is he reassures her the way he always has. I don't know if they've been married for a week or if they've been married for a few years at this point, but regardless, as she has doubts, as she has difficulties, as she has struggles in believing his faithfulness, whatever the difficulty is, he still reassures her and loves her and tells her that she is lovely and wonderful and does all the things that a husband should do if he's really loving his wife. And so that's, again, what I think is so remarkable about this particular man. Couple of lessons here for you as we wrap up. Not wrap up. I want to discuss these a little bit. We've only been in this about 25 minutes, but couple of things here about the beginning of a marriage. One is the beginning of a marriage is often very insecure. And one of the reasons the beginning of a marriage can be very insecure is because there can be power struggles. Let me possibly dangerously ask for a show of hands. Who dealt with power struggle issues early in their marriage? Really? Just me? Jody, good. Jeff, Joe. Okay. Whew! I was about to say I'm going to have to carry this one by myself. Well, and again, power struggles not even necessarily between husband and wife. A lot of the power struggles that Tiffany and I dealt with were between my parents and her. So you've got the whole parents letting their children go aspect that can be very difficult. That can make a beginning of a marriage very, very strenuous. We had the same thing with her parents. Her parents were much more. They'd already been through it twice years ago. Tiffany's older sister is 10 years older than her, and her brother is 13 years older than her. So her parents had already been through it and seen it and had grandkids and all that. So it was a lot easier for them than me. I was the second one married and pretty soon after my brother, and so there was a lot of difficulties there. That can cause a lot of difficulty. I know in my case, I finally had to have a conversation with my parents that said, enough is enough. Like, this is where we're at. And I've made my choice. I chose my wife. I cannot, by God's direction, choose you anymore. So you're going to have to back off. And had to have that difficult conversation with my parents. And by the way, if they ever visit, please don't tell them I told y'all that. So it's, but I mean, it is one of those difficult aspects of a new marriage relationship is learning how to love one another and put one another first, even over parents, over previous family, all of those things. That's all a very big part of the beginning of a marriage. Another thing is learning to live together. So let me throw that one out there. How many of you struggled to learn one another's habits and how to get along living together? Anybody? Okay, a few? Okay. So, and again, that's a big, it's kind of the age-old joke about how you do squeeze toothpaste out of a toothpaste tube, right? Do you do it from the middle or do you do it from the end? By the way, the correct answer is the end. Always the end. But I mean, it's one of those. I mean, Tiffany is a middle squeezer. I personally don't care enough to have a battle about that, but there's a lot of people that do, right? You get young men who have been living in a house with a bunch of young men for a long time, and suddenly they get married and their wife has a different standard of what cleanliness is. Don't you think that's going to cause some difficulty? I'll be honest, the entire first year of SC and the entire second year of college, I never washed my sheets once. I didn't know you were supposed to. My wife did. So we had to have a discussion about that, right? I mean, it's one of those things about, there were things I had to learn that I didn't know. And there are certain things that I care a whole lot about, and I'm very particular about that my wife could care less about. And so we've had to learn those types of things. Luckily, I'm very easy to get along with, so that makes things a lot easier, right? So, another thing that people often deal with is, again, problems with parents and friends. I've known a lot of different married couples that, you know, it's not even always parents. Sometimes it's friends, where the guy has a group of friends that he likes to hang out with, and he still has this expectation that he's going to go hang out with his buddies every Friday night. And that can become a big problem in a marriage when that's not the expectation of the spouse. Or the lady's been going on yearly vacations with her girlfriends for years, and now all of a sudden she's still wanting to do that, but that, you know, that leaves him out of a vacation, and you know that kind of stuff can be very problematic. Those types of difficulties and struggles can bring a lot of insecurity into a marriage. And so the concept of you know, a man and a woman struggling to learn to get along, and struggling to learn to enjoy each other, struggling to learn to trust one another, struggling to put one another first over their past, over their parents, over their problems, whatever it is, those can all be issues. One of the big things that I've dealt with lately in marriage counseling in the last couple of years has been the bringing together of finances. And what a difficulty that can be, because generally speaking, you get a very, you know, somebody who's very good and controlling and self-controlled with their finances that ends up marrying a bit of a free spirit. And the free spirit's coming to a marriage with $30,000 in credit card and student loan debt. And the other guy's like, man, I worked to pay myself through college so I wouldn't have to deal with this kind of stuff. Right? And now you're having to figure out, how do you meld those two lifestyles into a relationship? And it can just bring a lot of insecurity. You take that financial struggle, and now it causes the one who has been very particular about finances to be labeled as the hard-nosed bully, and then the other one to be the one who could just care less and it's got there spending money all the time, whether he or she is or isn't. And you start having a lot of difficulties in those marriages. That's part of this joining of marriages, and that's part of the insecurity that you see happening. Oftentimes, especially back in the old days, and I think this is less true these days, where we have a lot more similarities in lifestyles between men and women, but imagine back in the olden days when a woman truly felt like her job was to stay home. And a lot of women they've stayed home, they've not worked, and their husband is out working all day long. He comes in tired. Have anybody of you ever read the etiquette guides that used to be put out into women's magazines from like the 20s and 30s? Any of y'all ever read those? We find them hilarious these days, right? Because they are so countercultural to the way we do life now in our culture. But imagine yourself being in that culture where your job was to stay home and tend the house and tend the children once you had children, and the man is out having fun all day long, seeing people, being around people, and what a difficulty that can create. And so again, I don't know that we run into that as much anymore as we used to, but we do still. And part of the way we do it now, the difficulty is we have a lot of men and women who live two entirely separate lives, because you've got the man with his jobs and his buddies and his work schedule and his clients and whatever is involved with his job, and the woman has the same thing over on the other side, and that becomes very difficult, because it gets very difficult for me to talk about Sam and Edward down at work, and my wife's like, who's Sam and Edward? I don't know who those people are. And yet she's talking about somebody else and a funny story she heard today and how she just laughed her head off about a particular, and you're going, I don't even know what you're talking. I mean, and it can create a division and a separation. And so again, that can be very, very difficult to deal with in the early marriage until you figure those types of things out. Oftentimes, even especially again in the old way things were done, men were oftentimes accused of being very distant in the early marriage, and that's why you had all those etiquette guides about, make sure you put on your makeup and fix your hair before he comes home, and have dinner ready on the table, and welcome him in and take his shoes off, and you have all these. And the reason for a lot of those etiquette rules were because in an early marriage, it allowed the woman to continue building that relationship with a man who was coming home tired. And so that becomes very difficult, again, in this early marriage, especially in a more, old-time way of building this relationship. And so, again, that's part of it also. A lot of, for lack of better terms, one of the ways that oftentimes that was taught to be overcome was through intimacy, because that was part of what made the man feel more confident in the relationship and made him more loving toward her, and those types of things. And I think, again, you see some of that here. Interesting, isn't it interesting that her immediate response to him knocking on the door, whether that was in her dream or in real life, was to prepare herself for intimacy. That's why her hands were dripping with myrrh. That's why it seems that she was only wearing a cloak when she answered the door. And so again, that was a part of that early marriage relationship. So, again, that part of what you learn here in this section of the book is that it's important that a man and a woman early in their relationship, they work on establishing trust in one another. And what you have to do is you have to eliminate the things that are going to cause distrust, and you have to do the things that are going to cause one another to trust each other. We have a lot of books that have been put out these recent years that try to help with that, like Love Languages. Anybody read the 5 Love Languages? Well, not many. Okay, so excellent book. I mean, it's been out for a couple of decades now, so it's not new. But again, the whole premise of the book is find out the way your spouse experiences and displays love, and learn to love them the way they appreciate being loved. So some people are, really, appreciate words of affirmation. Some people appreciate acts of service. Some people appreciate quality time. Some people appreciate security. There's different ways to just, that people feel loved. And you figure out what it is your spouse needs to feel loved and start doing that. That can really simply be put as put them first. All right? I mean, that's really the essential, figure out how you can show them that they are first in your life. That's essentially the task there. There's another book that's been out more recently called Love and Respect, which basically is based off of Ephesians chapter 5, which basically says every man is looking for respect and every woman is looking for love. So if a woman can learn to respect her husband the way he, God designed him to need, he will feel fulfilled in that relationship. And if a man can learn to love his wife and display his love to her in a way that God designed her to need it, then she will feel satisfied in that marriage. And so if you will both do that job, you will have a good marriage. And so again, that same kind of idea of give to the other person what it is that they need. That's essentially what this section of Song of Solomon is teaching, I believe. That up until this point, we've learned about their infatuation and the growth of their love. Then we have the wedding night where they truly focus on each other. And then the early part of their marriage, what they're doing is they're learning how to create security for one another and love one another the way that the other person needs to be loved. And particularly here, the focus is on the woman. She feels insecure, and he has the task of helping her to feel secure again. And so that becomes a really important part. Any thoughts, comments, questions on that? Or early marriage stories you want to share with the rest of us if you're super brave? Because I could share a bunch. I feel bad sharing stories without my wife sitting here because y'all are going to think that I'm like throwing her under the bus, and I'm really not. So these are all stories we've shared with people before, but no takers on stories, comments, questions, disagreements. No? Then we're going to. So Jody starts to put his hand up, and then we see Karen look at him, and that's about the funniest thing I've seen all day. So, all right, go ahead, Jody.
Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you, Rebecca. Just after getting married, we moved to North Alabama. We're learning to live with each other in an apartment. Neither of us had jobs. I was starting school, and I picked on her way too much. I know that's kind of odd. And she was emptying the dishwasher, and a plastic strainer became a combative device to which I was beaten from the kitchen.
Nice.
It wasn't that bad, but I mean, she did land some blows with the strainer. And then, of course, she was so upset that she started crying. It just, from there, I didn't know whether to run or to hug.
Always hug.
Yeah, I deserved it. I deserved it.
So, well, and again, that's, I think we probably, most of us experienced some of those early marriage growth pains, I would think. And I think that's one of the reasons, one of the pieces of advice we were given early in our marriage is move far away from mom and dad as possible. Okay, and that wasn't about my parents, it wasn't about her parents, it was just general advice we were given from different people about there's just something that happens in a marriage that grows more difficult when you're near mom and dad, or it can be more, it can be better if you're far away. And again, there's always exceptions to that rule. That's not always true. There are some people who do great close to mom and dad. Tiffany and I at one point lived in her mom and dad's backyard, actually twice. We lived in her mom and dad's backyard. Once in an apartment behind their house, and then once we actually built a house in a yard adjacent to her mom and dad. So we made it work. But there's a lot of couples that I know probably really would do better if they would get away from mom and dad, because mom and dad had a problem with interfering and or taking sides. And oftentimes what's odd is in Christian couples, it's mom and dad taking sides against their child, which again creates more insecurity for the child, because now the child feels like the husband or wife doesn't support them, nor do mom and dad support them, and now they just feel completely alone, and it can create all sorts of difficulties. So just something to, there's a reason that advice is given. It's good to have those early difficulties and struggles and struggle through them together and grow. And that's what you see in this book. Anyone else? Oh boy, are we gonna get a mom and dad story? Because that'd be awesome.
I just wanted to clarify that I was just grinning during that because it's like they're not, my parents have never been like, taking Robert's side or anything, but I wouldn't dare complain to him anyway about him, because they'll go, Robert wouldn't do something like that. Yeah. Are you sure? Oh, Robert would never. And then I'm like, you're right, he didn't. It was just me being dramatic about it. But when you're talking about the finances, that cracked me up too, because I was the one who was not great at taking care of being responsible on my own. Basically, I was not super proficient at that, and I could admit it. And that was the thing that saved us and saved our relationship. I think that made it not so difficult, is because I was happy to admit when we got there that I was like, I am so bad with money. Here, you just take it all and you deal with it. And then I'll have this little account for you to give me money. And that way I don't mess anything up. I think being honest about our strengths and weaknesses is very important. And I've learned a lot about mine just from being married.
Yeah. Well, and that's where that learning to trust one another comes into play, because once you can learn to, that my ability to admit my weaknesses helps my wife trust me that I'm going to be honest when something is difficult. That's one of the things she and I have talked about a lot over the years is, we have a long list of what my weaknesses are. So we just kind of avoid all of these things. And so that helps a lot in our marriage, because she knows where to pitch in and help and where to overcome some of my weaknesses, and vice versa is true. That's one of the things she's always struggled with, actually up until about a year ago, is very tremendous migraines that make her go blind, and she cannot watch the kids when she can't see them. So, I've always had to figure out a way to work where I could be available when those kind of things happen. And so that, when there's a weakness, and that's not one you can really try to act like isn't there, because she literally goes blind. It's one of those things that it made things easier when we could just say, okay, this is the struggle. How do we overcome that together? And it causes us to trust each other. And I think you see that in Song of Solomon. I mean, here, this woman in the book, this is by no means typical of all women, but she is a very insecure woman. And you see that from the very beginning. She talks ugly, talks bad about what she looks like. She talks bad about the fact that she doesn't believe he should love her, that she is just an ordinary, run-of-the-mill kind of lady, and he has to tell her that she's unique and wonderful. She's insecure on their wedding night, and now she's insecure again in having either this dream or this, searching for him, and maybe even wondering whether he's faithful or not. She has dealt with a lot of insecurity, and he has had to help overcome that. And that, I think, is an important part of this. Every person has difficulties. Every person has weaknesses. A good marriage is a marriage where you can recognize those, as Aaron said, and overcome them together. And that's one of the great things about marriage, is that it allows us to do that. Donna?
I think parents play a huge role in raising their children to be good husbands and good wives. For one, we're examples to our children, and they're watching, and a lot of times children grow up to act the way they saw their father act or their mother act. And sometimes we don't realize how important it is, what kind of example we're giving our children. And not just that, teaching our sons to be attentive and to notice when the garbage needs to go out, or to learn how to iron his own shirt, or to not just be in his own little world all the time, but that you need to be attentive to things in this family that go on, and do your part. And that will bleed over into his marriage. He will just be trained to do that. And the same with our daughters, training them to be respectful and the things that a wife needs to be. I just believe it's so important for parents to be training your children for this important relationship, hopefully, that they're going to have one day in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, the more you can train a child at home, the more capable they will be at taking care of a family later, whether that be a spouse or whether that be children. There was a good friend of mine at FC. It was hilarious. His mom had never had him do laundry, had him do any sort of household chore. He was completely clueless. And so he came back his second semester with, I don't think, it wasn't a binder, it was like note cards that had been like circle ringed together. And it was like how to do your laundry step by step. Because he realized in college he needed to learn how to do all of that. And so his mom had to make him all of these like flip charts on how to do these different chores and things like that. Now he is a fantastic husband because he knows how to do all of that, you know, and that can be very helpful. It drives my wife nuts to no end that we separate clothes differently. And so I separate clothes one way, she separates clothes another way. So when I do the laundry, I don't do it her way, and that drives her nuts. So she just doesn't let me do laundry anymore because it drives her nuts. I feel the same way about the loading of the dishwasher. Like there's a particular way plates have to go. You have to think about the spray and where things can get washed off. And I'm not going to just cram it full, but I'm going to get it as full as I can, knowing everything's going to get clean. And my wife loads it up entirely differently, which means she does it wrong. So it's one of those things of learning how to do all of that and work together to make those things happen. The more you can teach children, better. And I particularly like what Donna said of learn how to find a need and do something about it. My wife instituted what we call SanFan the other day, which is see a need, fill a need. So we'll just announce SanFan in our house, and we expect all of our kids to go find something that they can do to help out in the house. So see a need, fill a need, SanFan. And it's not working great yet, but it will, because we're going to force it to. So that's the key, right? Consistency and making it happen. So hopefully y'all should tell my kids on Sunday SanFan, and they'll all go, oh. So just if you want to. So any other comments? I don't see any. So you are, I'll stop the recording, and you are welcome to do some discussing, talking.